Welcome to the Capital Exchange. I'm Steve Wilbur, Managing Director at Allen Capital Group.
And I'm Travis Portwood, Chief Investment Officer with Allen Capital Group.
Travis, we are again talking about inflation.
Imagine that.
In the latest commentary, you mentioned inflation is measured by CPI, also known as the Consumer Price Index, and it increased 8.5% year over year in March. That is the highest jump we've seen since 1981, but there is a bright side to the inflation number, isn't there?
There is, Steve, and we've talked about this in the past, but in light of the eye-popping inflation numbers, we think it makes sense to discuss them again. Series I savings bonds, or I bonds. So currently, I bonds pay an annualized interest rate of 7.12%. It's pretty good, right?
That is really good.
But the interest rate is set to jump to 9.6% on an annualized basis in May. Eye-watering rates for almost tax-free bonds. I'm sorry, risk-free bonds.
Yeah, that's true. I agree, Travis. And beyond the rates, let's talk about some of the advantages and limitations to I bonds, and to refresh people's memories of the mechanics of these bonds at a high level.
Okay.
First, there are two components to the interest rates. There is a fixed component that doesn't change for the life of the bond. And then the second component is linked to inflation. So it will fluctuate as the CPI number fluctuates. The interest rate is set twice a year, once in May and then once in November.
Right, Steve. And interest earned on the principal is compounded semi-annually. And that interest is added to the bond principal until maturity or until the bond is redeemed, whichever comes first. Now, the interest is also taxable at the federal level, but not at the state level. However, if you use the bond for higher education purposes, federal income tax may not apply to that interest.
Yeah, Travis, and there's two ways to buy I bonds. First, you can buy them electronically through treasurydirect.gov. The minimum amount you have to buy if you go buy them electronically is $25, and the maximum amount you can buy electronically is $10,000 per person or per tax ID per year. The second way you can buy I bonds is with your federal tax refund. The minimum amount you can buy with your federal tax refund is $50, and the maximum amount you can buy with that federal tax refund is $5,000. Now, this is assuming that you're getting a $5,000 tax refund. So if everything works out and each person is getting a $5,000 tax refund and they can buy $10,000 electronically per tax ID, there's a lot going on there.
Yep.
They can buy up to $15,000 in I bonds per year. Isn't that right?
That's right. But so let's talk about how long we actually have to hold I bonds once you've purchased them, Steve. I bonds will earn interest for up to 30 years unless you cash them out early. Now, you do have to hold them at least 1 year after you buy them. And if you cash out your I bond before 5 years, you're actually going to sacrifice 3 months worth of interest. So let's say I buy an I bond today and I hold them for 18 months and then cash out. I'm only going to get 15 months worth of interest because I have to sacrifice 3 months worth of interest because I didn't hold them 5 years.
And Travis, I want to point out that you can't buy I bonds on the secondary market. We need to emphasize you can't buy them in a brokerage account at TD Ameritrade or at Schwab or any other firm that you might have a brokerage account at.
That's correct, Steve. So, we've covered quite a bit of information about I bonds today in a short amount of time. It's been at a very high level. So let's summarize the main points here that people should be aware of. 1, I bonds are treasury bonds with interest linked to inflation, and that interest rate is set to jump to 9.6% on an annualized basis in May. 2, that interest is taxed at the federal level, not the state level. 3, the maximum amount you can purchase is $10,000 electronically, $5,000 with your tax return, assuming you're getting a $5,000 tax return, and that's per person or per tax ID per year. And 4, holding period, you have to hold the I bonds at least 1 year. And if you don't hold them at least 5 years, you're going to have to sacrifice 3 months worth of interest. It's a mouthful of information, Steve, a lot of moving parts. So if you have questions, contact your wealth advisor. They'll help you through the purchase process.
This has been great, Travis. I look forward to it next week.
Look forward to it as well. Thank you for watching this week's Exchange.
To make sure you don't miss out on future discussions, please follow us on social media.
Make sure to like and share our videos, and we'll see you next week.